All right, so let's get our conversation going. Erick Erickson, to you first. You're a friend and an ally of the Tea Party, a prominent conservative. Why all this activity so soon after the election? Senator Lugar, of course, going home to raise money. The Tea Party will be there. But I want to start with Michelle Bachmann. The Tea Party Express saying, we will have our own response to the President's State of the Union. Seems to me the only way you can interpret that is maybe nothing against Chairman Paul Ryan, but, you know, you're the establishment. We're going to do it our way.
Well, you know, I think the Tea Party movement wants a voice and has wanted as best it can to be distinct from both the Republican and the Democratic Party. And so they're doing this as a Tea Party candidate who happens to be a Republican. I'm not actually sure that there are very many, if any, Democrats there, but they definitely want to be distinct from the parties and not delivering a party response so much as a grassroots response. But, you know, going to the New Hampshire question as well, I totally agree with the editor of the Union Leader there that the state party chairman, if he's a Tea Party activist, he needs to back off. Republican Party chairman should not be involving themselves in politics like that.
But he is, and the Tea Party, he has been so far. The Tea Party Express is saying it wants to get involved, John Avlon, on a huge night. The President of the United States, who has been going up in the polls, will give his State of the Union address. It is essentially joining the battle over the next fight over big priorities, spending cuts, the economy, jobs, and now the Republican Party wants to answer with one voice, but.
Yeah, and the fact that they're wrapping their arms around Michelle Bachmann is particularly problematic. I mean, she's as close as there is to a Sharon Engel or Christine O'Donnell in the Congress. And the fact that Paul Ryan, who's got such strong credentials as a fiscal conservative, who the Tea Party would naturally, I think, try to embrace in advance as a young gun who's serious about cutting spending, deficits, and the debt, the fact that Bachmann is an attractive alternative to Paul Ryan speaks to a really deep fissure in the Republican Party, and it's not really the libertarian split. It's the far right versus the center right, and that becomes a real problem when it comes to governing. And that's what you see in New Hampshire as well.
John, let's be clear. There's no such thing as the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the Tea Party. The Tea Party, they are the Republican Party. And so...
I'm not so sure.
Well, they can dance around it all. You look at...
They're Republicans, but I think there's still a struggle for sort of a who's on first, who's in charge.
Yeah, but the reality is when you look at that CBS poll on the Tea Party, one of the most extensive, 96% of them identify with Republicans. And so they're not on the Democratic side. The problem here is you talk about messaging. Because if you're the Republican Party and you control the House, the last thing you want coming out of the State of the Union is to have two different messengers out there when you're trying to still go against the Democratic Party. And a lot of the criticism people said was watch out for this sort of split inside the party. When you start having people say that Senator Orrin Hatch is not conservative enough, I mean, I'm trying to figure out who do you then want?
Well, they just did that. They just did that to Bob Bennett out in the state of Utah. But Eric, to Roland's point, I think it's fascinating. And energy is good in politics, and activism is good in politics, no matter where it comes from. The more people playing, the better the system. But it is an interesting challenge where you obviously have in the Tea Party movement people who say, we just proved something in 2010, and we want to continue to prove it. Does make the governing challenge, though, a bit harder for the leadership, does it not?
Yeah, it definitely does. But, you know, we're dealing with the whole concept they call the Overton window, where you try to push the window of what's within acceptable bounds here. And it's what many people have done, Democrat and Republican, where the Tea Party movement stakes out a position pretty far to the right to make sure that the Republicans move in their direction and not move toward the Democratic direction. That's all that's going on here. Both sides do it. And the Tea Party movement has a lot of energy it wants to keep mobilized, and they're not going to be able to keep it mobilized if they appear now to be the establishment.
I don't recall MoveOn.org having their own response on the State of the Union address when the Democrats took over Congress. So again, you can try to say it's on the left as well, but this is a whole different deal to have your own response to the President's State of the Union address.
You make
it. You know, again, they feel disconnected from the Republican establishment.
Already? It's been, what, 2 months? Wow.
Well, look, they've never felt like they've been a part of it.
Yeah, when Michelle Bachmann's her standard bearer, you're sending a very different signal here. You know, the Tea Party's got an opportunity to help shape a leadership agenda right now. And when Eric starts talking about the Overton window, you start getting insight into the problem in our politics today, which is the extremes hijacking the process. And in a state like New Hampshire in particular, where it has an open primary and independents outnumber Democrats or Republicans, that, you know, a successful Republican Party needs to reach out to the center. It needs to reach out to those independents. And they should be putting all their focus on cutting spending, deficit, and the debt. And it'd be nice if they were more consistent insistent about the libertarian rhetoric as well. Michelle Bachmann doesn't fit that bill. She appeals to the far right.
John makes an interesting point. When you talk to conservatives in New Hampshire, they're a little bit nervous because there won't be a serious Democratic challenger, and because independents, anybody can vote, independents can cross over and vote in the Republican Party, they are a little worried that you'll have a more liberal or a less conservative presidential primary because there's no action on the Democratic side. That's something we'll watch in the weeks and months ahead.